Today on our 2016 Chevrolet Silverado 2500, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Firestone Ride-Rite air helper springs, part number F2430. So here's what our airbags look like when they're fully installed. Now these are going to mount in between our axle and our frame here, and they're going to provide us 4,800 pounds of load leveling support. Now our airbags are going to enhance our factory suspension for safety and stability when we're carrying a heavy load by keeping it level and preventing the sagging in the back of our truck and keeping our headlights level where they're supposed to be, and they're going to help reduce tire wear and premature wear on our factory suspension components. Now since we have individual valves for each one of our airbags, they're going to be able to adjust independently, which is great because we're going to be able to maintain weight distribution with adjusting the air pressure individually for those times that we have an off-center load. Not only are airbags going to help level out our truck, but they're also going to give us a nice comfortable ride, absorbing some of the road shock and softening the contact between our frame and our axle, preventing bottoming out. Now our airbags are adjustable from 5 to 100 psi, and I do want to mention that they're not going to increase the payload or the towing capability of your truck, but they're just going to help support the weight and keep it from sagging. So you always want to double check your owner's manual before beginning to tow. Now before we begin our installation, I'd like to take a few measurements here at the fender to see where our ride height is at. And now here at the back, it's going to be just over 43 inches. Now on the front, here at the center of the wheel well, it's going to be about 42¼ inches. All right, now I'm going to be adding a load of water to simulate a heavy load or towing a heavy trailer, and we can see the effects that it has on our vehicle and how much it's going to sag. Now with the load in the back, we can double check our measurements, and it actually dropped down to just a little bit below 41 inches in the back. In the front, it's actually just a little bit above the factory setting. So we can see how much it did affect our vehicle once we put a heavy load in the back. Now I can take our vehicle on our test course here, and I can immediately tell you that it is much rougher during the ride, and I can definitely tell that I'm carrying a heavy load. As we go through our slalom course, I can tell you I can definitely feel a difference in how my truck's handling, and it doesn't feel like there's as much control as I'd like there to be. Overall, the ride is definitely rougher, and it doesn't feel like I have as much control. Now I'm going to show you the measurements that we have after we have our airbags installed with the same load. Now we're right back at factory height with only 40 pounds. So we're just over 43 in the back, and on the front, it brought it right back to factory height, which is just above 42 inches. Now here we have our truck back on our test course after we installed our airbags with the same load. And I can already tell you that it's much smoother and it reacts more quickly going over the bumps. Now as we come up to our slalom course, and I start going through, I can immediately tell you a difference. It just wants to handle better, and it genuinely seems like the truck wants to go a little faster. And I can definitely tell you that it's a big improvement over the factory suspension, and it doesn't really seem like I'm carrying as heavy of a load as I am. The truck wants to respond quicker, come in and out of the corners faster, and it genuinely just feels a lot more of a softer ride. Now that we've gone over some of the features and benefits, let's show you how we got them installed. To begin our installation, I already went ahead and removed my spare tire to give myself a little bit of extra working room and so you can see a little bit better. Now we're going to need to remove this heat shield that's on the outside of our tire. Now we're going to have 2 bolts holding it in place, one towards the back, and then if we come around, there's going to be another one right about here, but on the back side. Now I'm going to be using a 13mm socket to remove that bolt. And we can set this aside for right now. We're going to need to remove our factory joust stop, and this is going to be the one on the driver's side here. Now, I'm just going to take a pry bar and find something to pry against, and I'm going to remove it just by prying on it. It should just pop right out. Or you might be able to just grab it and pull it out. Now we're going to need to remove both sides. Next, we're going to be taking our upper bracket. That's going to be the one that's going to have the tabs. It kind of looks like it's facing up. Now, when we put this in position, we're going to want to make sure that these large tabs are towards the center of our truck and they're facing up. And then we're going to take our round U-bolt right here, just to give you an idea of how this is going to work. This bracket is going to go over the cup that was holding our factory job stop, and then this U-bolt is going to go around it and secure it like this. And it's going to go through the end of our bracket here. So once we get it into position, we're going to slide our U-bolt in place and have it go through our bracket like that. Now I just want to mention that you want to keep in mind you may need to move or push out of the way the e-brake cable that's right here. So I'm just going to push mine out of the way for now, push my bracket into place, and I can slide my U-bolt in place, and we can get ready to put our hardware in. With our U-bolt through, we can take our spacer. We're going to line up the holes and have our U-bolt go through that bracket. Then we're going to take our flange nuts and secure it down. Now I'm going to come back using a 9/16 socket and tighten up the nuts. I do want to mention you want to alternate so it doesn't get in a bind or a twist. Next we'll bring our attention to our airbag itself and the lower bracket. Now we're going to want our bracket to be in this position with the tabs going down, and if we look on the bottom of our airbag, we're going to have a threaded hole, and that's how we're going to be attaching our airbag to our bracket. So if we take our whole airbag and bracket sitting on top of each other like this, and we flip it over so that the bottom of the airbag is facing up, and our bracket, the tabs are also facing up, we're going to line up the slotted hole on our bracket, and we're going to take our 3/8 flathead screw, and we're going to thread it into the bottom there. Now we don't want to tighten it all the way up. We just want it to be a little snug, so there's a little bit of tension, but you don't want to tighten it all the way down because we're going to have to dry fit everything and make sure everything lines up properly. So as you can see, we can still move it around, and if we need to, we can go ahead and loosen it up just a little bit so that we can slide it back and forth as well. Now if your airbag started to fill up with air, like this, a trick is if we take the cap off, we can compress the airbag and then replace the cap, and it'll keep it nice and tight. Now we're going to need to have it as small as possible because we're going to have as much room as we can to get the airbag in place. Now before we put our airbag in place, you'll notice that we had that air fitting here, and there's a small tab right here. Now if we look on our upper bracket, the large hole is where our air fitting is going to go through. Now these two smaller holes, those are going to be for aligning our brackets and our airbag into place. Now that small tab is going to fit into either one of these, and we need to make sure that it's fully seated because if it's not, it could cause damage to the airbag that will not be covered under warranty. So we can take our airbag, and you want to put the large ears with the holes towards the leaf springs and the smaller section towards the middle of the axle here. Now this boot or cover is not going to fit through the alignment hole for our air fitting, so I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on it, relieve the boot, and then slowly let the airbag go up, rotating it until it locks into position. Now we know that this is in the alignment hole because I can't rotate it anymore. So I'm just going to draw a small line, and this is going to be a reference point so that I know where I need to tighten everything up in case something starts spinning or gets out of alignment when I take it back out. So we're going to go ahead and take our airbag assembly back out so we can tighten up that bolt. I'm going to line up the tabs, and once I have it lined up, I'm going to take a 7/32 Allen and tighten up that bolt on the bottom. Now with it lined up and tightened down, we can go ahead and reinstall the airbag assembly. As we can see, it's still in the alignment tab hole, and everything's nice and secure. Now where the large threaded piece is coming through the bracket, we're going to be putting some hardware in place. First, we're going to take a star washer, we're going to slide it over the fitting, and then we're going to take the large nut that we have in our kit, and we're going to thread it in place. Now this is going to keep the airbag itself attached to the upper bracket. I'm going to come back with a 1 1/8 wrench and I'm going to snug up that bolt. Now we don't need to go crazy and extra tight, we just want it to be snug. Now I will tell you it is a little bit difficult to get this size wrench in this area, but with a little bit of patience you can get it tight. Next we're going to take our air fitting. This is going to be the quick disconnect style and it's going to have some red Loctite on it. We're going to thread that into the top of where we just put that nut. And we're going to want to tighten this down until all the thread lock is being engaged by the threads inside. Now I'm going to come back with a 9/16 wrench and tighten it up. Next thing we're going to need to do is install the bail clamp. Now this clamp is going to be going around our factory U-bolts here, and it's going to be coming from the outside, and it's going to go through the holes on our bottom bracket on the back side here as well as on the front. So we're going to take our bail clamp and be mindful of all the wires and cables that are on the side. I'm going to wrap it around the back side. And now you may need to move the bracket slightly, just like I just did. And then we're going to take another one of our 3/8 flange nuts and secure them in place. I'm going to come back with a 9/16 socket and I'm going to tighten up the nuts. Now I do want to mention you want to alternate between the front and the back so it doesn't get in a bind and it pulls that bracket evenly towards the leaf spring. Now on our bottom bracket here we're going to have a square hole and that's where we're going to be mounting our carriage bolts. Now we're going to come from the top. You may need to move the airbag out of the way slightly and we're going to drop the bolt down until it sits nice and intact in the hole. Now we're going to do the same thing for the one on the back side. Now with both carriage bolts in position, we're going to take our saddle clamp here and you'll notice there's a half moon shape or a U shape in the center. That's what's going to be straddling the axle like this, so you want to make sure that's going up. And we're going to line up the holes with our carriage bolts that we just dropped down. Then we're going to take our 3/8 flange nuts and secure them. I'm just going to put one on hand tight for now so I don't have to worry about dropping the bracket. Then I can grab my carriage bolt from the other side and put it into position. I want to mention again, when we begin to tighten these, you want to alternate back and forth so it gets a nice even clamping force. Now that we have this left side done, we're going to go ahead and repeat the same process on the passenger side. The only difference is going to be is that there's going to be a heat shield that we're going to have to put in place. We're going to get ready to start running our airlines. Now in our kit they only gave us one large piece, but we have 2 bags and 2 valves that we're going to need to hook them up to. So we're going to need to find a halfway point on our airline tube. So if you take both ends, put them together, you can start running your hand down the airline tube. And once we reach the end, that should be the very center of our airline tube. So even though there may be a few tangles in there, right about here should be the middle of our airline tube. Now I'm going to be using a tubing cutter to cut it, and I just want to mention you don't want to use a pair of pliers or side cutters because you want a flush cut and an even cut as possible so we don't have any leaks. Now the way we're going to install our airline into our fitting is we're going to take our tube and we're going to push straight down into the fitting and make sure that it's locked in place by pulling against it. And that's how we're going to know that it's locked, is if it doesn't come out. Now we're going to need to route these airlines towards the back of our vehicle where we're going to put our inflation valves in place. Now, everybody's going to do it a little bit differently, so I'm going to go ahead and get these ran and then I'll show you how I did it. So I actually took my airline tube and I went inside my frame rail and then ran it towards the back to where it came out of the frame rail, and then I had it drop down right here at the back of my hitch. Now on the passenger side, I went inside the frame rail just like on my driver's side, running it along, coming out the back, but on this time I zip tied it coming across my hitch so it can meet up where I'm going to put my inflation valve. So here's our inflation valve, and I decided that we're going to mount it right here at the farthest point away from the center of our hitch. That way it's out of the way and it's kind of hidden by the bumper, but it's still easily accessible. Now the way we're going to attach this to our hitch here is they provide us with some long zip ties. So we're just going to feed it through the slot in our bracket, put our bracket in place, and then we can bring our zip tie up and around and secure it to our hitch. We'll go ahead and get the other zip tie in as well. We can go ahead and grab our inflation valves. I'm going to take the cap off. I'm going to hold on to this and set it aside because we are going to be reusing this. But we can go ahead and remove the nut that's on our inflation valve and get ready to mount it. We're going to take the threaded piece here and we're going to take one of the 3/8 flat washers that are in our kit. We're going to slide it over and then we're going to put the threaded piece through our bracket, followed by another flat washer, and then we can finally secure it down with the nut. Now we're going to repeat that same process for our other inflation valve. Now I'm going to come back using 2 1/2-inch wrenches and tighten up my valves. So we're going to hook our air lines up to our inflation valves the same way we did our air bags. We're going to push them in, making sure they seat all the way in there, and then give them a nice tug to make sure they lock into place. Now also I want to mention that I'm not going to personally be trimming any of my excess air lines because I like to keep as much excess slack as I can in case for the future of any further repairs or anything changes that might need to be made. So I'm just going to make a few loops and then tie it up out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and put some air in my valves, that way I can check for any leaks. I'm going to come back with some soapy water now and I'm going to spray not only my connection points but the airbag itself to check for any leaks. What we're looking for is air bubbles, but not these soap bubbles that are just staying here. Those are okay. The bubbles that we're looking for are going to be continuously going and they're going to be coming up from the air pressure. Finally, I'll go ahead and check my inflation valves on both sides to make sure that the hose end or the valve core end is not leaking. Now, one last thing we need to do is put our heat shield back up and put our spare tire back in place. So I'm going to be using a 13mm socket to put the bolts back in. And that'll finish up our look at the Firestone Ride-Rite air helper springs, part number F2430 on our 2016 Chevrolet Silverado 2500.